City Council meeting to order. I'm going to invite Captain Williams to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jennifer, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avila,
Here.
Councilmember Beaver,
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe, Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Here.
Mayor Bogue,
Here.
and Ray Casey is on via teleconference call.
Are you there, Ray?
Here.
All right. All right, so we have to go into an approval of the agenda for public hearing item number 1, to move the public hearing up to the first item at 6:10 p.m. And including in that, we also need to remove the employee introduction and move that to another date. So is everyone okay with approval of the agenda?
I'll approve the motion as you indicated.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to a special presentation. And this one is for Mark Taylor. Mark, can you come on up? Before we vote on this, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Mr. Taylor, Mark Taylor. You know, there's people out there who have issues, that see issues in the community, and they want to do something good for the community, and then see an issue in the community, and sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up here, but they see an issue in the community and they want to take care of it themselves, and Mr. Taylor is one of those guys. He saw that there was a need for litter removal in his neighborhood, and so without any discussion or issue, and without asking anybody else, Mr. Taylor took on the idea and decided to remove the litter himself, and he's been doing it. How long have you been doing it now, Mark?
Last year.
Since March. And how often do you do it?
I do about 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah, so he's removing litter throughout his neighborhood 4 or 5 times a week, and it's really making a big difference in the community. The area looks impeccable, and for that I want to recognize you and all your efforts. You're an incredible citizen of Yucaipa and a resident of Yucaipa. And with that, do you have anything you'd like to?
No, I've just kind of have a small joke that, I see a lot of the same people drive by me every day, or walk by, and I often wonder if they think how many court-ordered community service hours did I get?
So you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart, not okay. Yeah. All right.
Strictly volunteer.
All right. Well, you're doing an incredible job, and for that, I wanted to recognize you and your efforts. You're a great asset to the city of Yucaipa. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to accept this certificate of recognition for Mr. Taylor.
I would like to say, this is extraordinary, and you should be proud, and I'm certainly very proud to have an opportunity to shake your hand today. There's only one other person that I know of in this community that does that. His first name is Mark, too, but I think he lives in a different part of the town. And even though we have Adopt a Street program, it's so rewarding and uplifting to hear about people such as you who take your time to do your part in an extraordinary fashion. And I salute you. And again, I'll be glad to shake your hand, be privileged and honored. And with that, I'd like to motion to accept that Mr. Taylor receives this award.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or comments?
Just that I know Mark, and when I saw that we were going to be giving him this award, it didn't surprise me at all that he was doing that, and he's got a great family. They're all here, and I want to thank you. Great job.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? All right, with that, we're going to have our picture taken with you, and maybe you can call your family down, and
I don't think they want to be in it.
you sure? So I know we're supposed to have this public hearing at 6:10. Do I need to wait till 6:10, or can we go ahead and start? And
No, we have to wait until 6:10, so you can keep moving on public comment.
how about we have mayor and council member business? Is that okay? Is there anything anyone would like to talk about for mayor and council member business?
Yes, City Manager Ray Casey and I attended the annual San Bernardino County State of the County conference and presentation. As always, the Board of Supervisors were exclaiming the positive notions of what's going on in San Bernardino. New businesses are coming up. Employment is relatively up. We have lower unemployment than the state, I believe, and certainly less than the country. And always ends with a positive note. And there's a couple of interesting things. The largest manufacturer of drone aircraft for military use is manufactured here in San Bernardino County. And that the largest rare earth minerals manufactured for commercial and military use, or mined for commercial and military use, is mined here in San Bernardino County also. So by all indications, we're on the move. We're on the road to recovery, and we all left with a very positive feeling. And I don't know if Mr. Casey has anything more to add to that. Here's your opportunity, Ray.
Sorry, I was on mute. I think you covered it pretty well, Councilmember Avila.
Okay, and with that, that's all I have.
All right, anything else? Justin, you have something?
I just want to thank the Community Services Department and all city staff for putting on another fantastic festival for our community this week. It was talked about from my coworkers that don't live in this county, or the city for that matter. They visited, they attended, so bravo, outstanding job as always. Thank you for that.
Bob, do you have
I'd
something?
like to echo that. It was fantastic. You guys did a great job, and it was really, really went well. Thank you.
John, you good?
Same, that's it.
Same, all right. It was a great event, and I think turnout was a little bit lower than average, but it was still a great event. Awesome, great job, guys. All right, so with that, can we go ahead into our public hearing, which is item number 1, and I will open up the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately for this type of hearing, there's a very specific time frame that has been advertised, and under the California Voting Rights Act, we just suggest we wait for the additional minute or so and start
Okay.
right on the dot at 6:10. So I know
We'll
it's
wait.
a little
I see
little
6:09,
unusual, so-
maybe I'm a little,
No, I got 6:09.
I've always been early, I guess.
Do all 4 of the meetings have to start like this on this certain time? Or all 5, I should say, right? There's 5 altogether.
Yeah, these are a little different than our normal hearings.
Our electeds are too or short-winded? That's kind of strange, huh?
Did you win at the car show Friday night?
I did not.
He entered his 1954.
Unfortunately,
Corvette.
I forgot to enter my car into the car show.
okay, yeah.
I went to the car show, but I did not enter, so.
Well, I didn't enter either, so. Is it time?
It says
is time.
6:10, so we open the public hearing, and we will hear staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this public hearing this evening is to inform the public about the redistricting process and provide members of the community an opportunity to voice their opinions about which factors should be taken into consideration while creating district boundaries. NDC has been retained by the city to help us with this redistricting event, and over the weekend, I wanted to report that NDC did receive and ran the 2020 census data for Yucaipa, and it appears that the current districts are population balanced, which could be viewed as a very good thing. So at this time, I would like to introduce Jeff Simonati of NDC, who is joining us remotely this evening to summarize the process, the requirements, and to present options for your consideration based on the recently released census data. So Jeff, it's over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jeff Simonetti, and I'm with the National Demographics Corporation. Just making sure that everyone can hear me okay over the phone.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, if we can go to slide 2, appreciate the introduction. And tonight we'll be walking through the 2021 redistricting process, some of the project timelines, key deadlines, and next steps and hearings in the process. So, as was mentioned in the introduction, we are talking about the process of taking a look at the current district boundaries and aligning them with the new census data and making sure that they are in compliance with both the Federal Voting Rights Act and some of the California Voting Rights Act legislation. You were mentioning some of the timelines, and one of the reasons why we have to hold the hearing at a specific time is exactly for that reason. The California Voting Rights Act has a very specific requirement for the law. So if we can go to slide 3, as you know, within the city of Yucaipa, council members hold 4-year terms, and they're staggered depending on the districts. So districts 1 and 2 terms end in November of 2022, and districts 3, 4, and 5, their terms end in November of 2024. For the purposes of the redistricting process, the new map that is determined will be effective for all of the new elections starting in November of 2022.
Jeff,
So, yes,
hello, Jeff?
yes.
For whatever reason, you're fading out at the end of your sentences. So I'm not sure if you're moving the mic. Are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead. I just let
hear
you
me
know
better
that we have a hard time hearing the end of your sentence.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I put you on speakerphone, and I'll hold my microphone right up to my mouth.
Okay.
Okay, so if we can go to slide 4. In terms of the redistricting process, there are a couple of key steps here. We have 2 initial hearings, and these are held prior to the release of the draft maps. They are related to education, and here we are going to be soliciting input on communities within the district, and particularly communities of interest. We had the U.S. Census data release in mid-August, and then we had the California data release, as was mentioned, here in early October. The difference between the U.S. Census Bureau data release and the California statewide release, which is the one that we use, is that California adjusts for what's called the prisoner adjustments in the in redistricting data. For the actual count of the census, prisoners are counted within the prisons. However, they are counted in terms of city population for their last known address. So the state of California takes the U.S. Census data, makes those prisoner adjustments, and that was released in early October of 2021, which we just ran the data here for that. In addition, we'll have 2 draft map hearings to discuss and revise the draft maps and discuss the election sequence. Those are pending for January 24th and February 28th. And then we'll have a map adoption by no later than April 17th of 2022. And that is the final date that the city has to adopt a map and deliver that to the San Bernardino County Registrar of Voters. So if we can go to slide 5, there are 3 main rules and goals for the redistricting process. If you see the red box on the left that says federal laws, and this is pertinent to our discussion this evening, particularly pertains to the Federal Voting Rights Act, where we have to have equal population and there can be no racial gerrymandering. The light blue bucket in the center is the California criteria for cities, and that is specifically related to the Fair Maps Act, which was AB 849, and has passed in between when you did your actual districting and now. It was passed in 2019. So among other things, they have AB 849 has specific requirements like we have tonight for starting hearings at a time specific. But for the purposes of the mapping process, they have 4 criteria that are rank ordered, and this is important. So the districts have to be geographically contiguous. They have to have undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest, which means that they are socioeconomic geographic areas that should be kept together. They have to have easily identifiable boundaries, and the districts have to be compact, which means they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And as a universal prohibition, they shall not favor or discriminate against the political party. Finally, there are other traditional redistricting principles on the right-hand side, and there are a couple of important ones here. First, you can factor in future population growth. So let's say, for example, that you know there is a part of the city within a particular district that is planning on having a significant growth and development over the next couple of years. You can slightly underfill that district to make sure that you factor in the proposed population increase. Finally, we talk about minimizing voters that are shifted to different election years. And what that means is, let's say, for example, you're currently in a district that votes in the 2022 election, but the lines are drawn differently, and now you are put into a district that would be in a 2024 race. We try to minimize the amount of people that would be shifted in that. So if we can go to slide 6, this is the summary of your existing districts. So this uses the official 2020 census data for each of Yucaipa's existing districts. The important line here is looking at, it's the third from the top, the one that says percent deviation. When we talk about having population balanced districts, the rule of thumb is that the total deviation, meaning the population in the smallest district versus the largest district, has to be under 10%. As you can see, the total deviation there is 8.66%. So your districts are currently population balanced, in keeping them in the same way. What we need to still do is to make sure that there are no issues related to the Federal Voting Rights Act or the California Voting Rights Act. But if there aren't, it's a policy choice. If the city would like to keep their districts the way they are, and we don't find any challenges associated with either the Federal Voting Rights Act or the California Voting Rights Act, and we'll talk about the process here. You can keep your districts as is because they are population balanced. With that caveat that we need to make sure and go back and determine if there are any Federal Voting Rights Act issues. So when we go to the next slide, if we go to slide 7, one of the things that we're looking at here is making sure that there are we're making sure that there's balances amongst protected class voting rights. And the important ones that we look at here are what we call citizen voting age population. Slide 7 here shows the Latino citizen voting age population. And for each one of the maps that I'm going to show you here, the purple and blues represent lower percentages within the census block, and the orange and reddish colors represent higher percentages. So you can see here that parts of District 2 and particularly the boundaries between Districts 3 and 4 have higher percentages of Latino citizen voting age population. And when we talk about citizen voting age population, that's any citizen who is above 18 years of population within the city. We go to slide 8, you can see the Asian American citizen voting age population, and there are some concentrations in Districts 1 and 2. Then if we go to slide 9, this shows the African American citizen voting age population. So one of the distinctions that the Fair Maps Act has made since its passage in 2019, and this is something that has changed since the process that you undertook back, I believe, in 2016, is that it makes specific mention of defining neighborhoods and communities of interest and keeping those undivided. So what we want to talk through is a discussion related to what are your neighborhoods and what are your communities of interest within the city. So when we talk about a neighborhood, it's exactly what you would think it is. It could be physical features that are kind of defining neighborhoods. They could be natural, things like mountains, streams, rivers, canals. They could be things that are unnatural, highways, streets, major rivers, those types of things, major roads. They can also be an area around a specific landmark, parks, schools, or a downtown. If we go to slide 11, when we go to talk about communities of interest, it takes that idea of a geographic area and then adds a shared issue or characteristic on top of that. So it could be an area that has a shared social or economic interest. It could be an area that is impacted similarly by city or county policies. And here we're asking you and the general public to tell us your community's story. So the question is, would the community that you are identifying benefit from being included within a single district for its purposes of effective and fair representation, or would it benefit more from having multiple representatives? So if we go to slide 12, this is a list of possible neighborhoods and communities. And we spoke with planning staff, and I know that these are areas that the general plan has identified as neighborhoods. I want to make mention that this is not an exhaustive list. It's something that can be added to, taken away from, but this is just to begin the discussion on this. So the Dunlap areas neighborhood, the areas around Wildwood Canyon, the areas in central Yucaipa, which includes the Uptown District, which I believe is your historic district, the Chapman Heights Pacific Plan, the North Bench in the northeast part of the city. It was also my understanding that during the original process of districting that it was identified that the 10 freeway corridor was an area that they wanted to define as a neighborhood and discuss representation related to that. So this is, like I said, not an exhaustive list, but something to begin the discussion on that.
Jeff,
So
I
we go
would
to
just,
slide 13.
hang on, Jeff.
Yes.
Just to note, these were the areas that you identified when you did districting in 2016.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So if we can go to slide 13, so the next steps here at the second hearing, we'll have council discussion related to this and talk about what are the areas that meet each AB 849 definition of neighborhoods and communities of interest that should be included within a single district for its purposes of its effective and fair representation. We go to slide 14 here. We have a couple of key dates and next steps, and I want to walk through this in more detail. So tonight, October 11th, is our first public hearing that's held prior to the release of the draft maps. On November 8th, we'll have a second public hearing to identify the neighborhoods, communities of interest, and secondary areas. And at that point, we should have a better idea, and we'll have had time to go through the maps, and in particular look at, are there any federal or California Voting Rights Act issues related to the new population data that we have from the census in the existing districts. At that point, it will be, if that is the case, it will be a policy choice of the city council to say, if there are no issues related to that, and our districts are population balanced, do we want to keep our districts as they are? And I want to stress that that's a policy choice. We have some cities who say they want to keep their districts as is if they're population balanced. I have one client that we're working with right now that has population balanced districts, but they don't like the way that their districts are, and they want to redo it and go through the full process. It's completely a policy choice at that point, as long as there are no federal or state Voting Rights Act issues. If that's the case, then you will still have to go through your 4 public hearings. So we'll have the second hearing on November 8th. But the 3rd and 4th public hearings can be just shortened versions, and then you would adopt an ordinance to keep your districts as is. But regardless, the deadline to adopt those maps and submit them to the San Bernardino County Registrar has to be no later than April 17th of 2022. And regardless of that process, you still have to hold 4 public hearings. So the final slide here, slide 15, is ways that you can share your thoughts about the process. The city has set up a particular website, which is yucaipa.org/Yucaipa-redistricting. And we have also set up a specific email, which is redistricting@yucaipa.org, where the public can submit questions or comments related to that. So with that, we appreciate your time and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, before we go on, though, before we move forward, I want to note that I do not have any public comments at this point. Do we, Jennifer?
No public comments have been received for this item.
Okay, so with that, are there any questions or comments for the presenter? Jeff? Justin, you have anything? Bob, do you have something?
I have a question. So right now with the Latino CVAP, Asian American and African American, there doesn't seem to be any neighborhoods of, what do they call it, of interest, or there doesn't seem to be any of that. Is that agreed, or is that your thoughts?
So when you're talking about those are 2 different things. So neighborhoods and percentage of citizen voting age population are 2 different things. So when we talk about looking at federal Voting Rights Act issues, is that when we're looking at the citizen voting age population, we need to make sure that we're not, with the way that the districts are currently drawn, splitting protected class voting in a way that would there be a way to draw for example, a majority Latino seat? And that's what we need to go through in terms of looking at those different scenarios to make sure that there's no challenges that are associated with that. But that has to do with population amounts rather than specific neighborhoods. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
David, you have something?
Yes, because there are no ethnic neighborhoods and that our community is balanced, or it's relatively consistent throughout the districts, which means that it's relatively consistent throughout the whole city, is exploring the option of going back to non-districts viable, or is that something that we cannot do by law?
That is a question that I would defer to your city attorney on, but I will tell you this. You've probably read in the news about some of the high-profile cases that are related to, particularly Santa Monica, that has, some very high-profile legal challenges that they're going through related to moving to by-district elections. There have been many cases throughout the state that for cities that have not gone to by-district elections, they're opening themselves up to both legal and financial liabilities associated with that. So that remains a challenge.
Mr. Snow?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it is something that this council could consider, going back to an at-large district, provided that this new census data actually supports that. And as Mr. Simonetti mentioned, there could be risks that go along with that. The first step would be to analyze the data to see whether that decision could be supported. That would be the first step.
Okay, and this is just my opinion and not, I don't represent the city council when I say this, but if we don't have a community that has any specific ethnic or other neighborhoods of interest, there's really not a reason to have districts. Economically, I think we're all pretty much even. Ethnically, we're pretty much even all across the board. And to separate us and create a council that serves a district rather than a whole city, in my opinion, is not the best use of government in the city of Yucaipa. That's just my opinion.
But what was the reason why we did this in the first place? Because it really wasn't something we wanted to do. This was something that we did trying to get out in front of possibly having litigation, as in some of the other cities around us, right?
That's exactly correct. Because the risks of litigation, if successful, are attorney's fees, and they can be very large amounts. So this council made the strategic decision to press forward with the transition to district voting. And in doing so, before there were any letters or anything else, there was not an opportunity for someone to bring a legal challenge or commence an action that then could have exposed the city to various legal fees.
And if I may also add, City of Highland challenged it, and they lost close to $1 million. But they're a different, their city is definitely, they have some specific demographics in there that's completely different than what Yucaipa has. And we only did it because we're trying to avoid that letter from that one law firm that said that if you don't, we will sue you. And if you do, you still owe us $20,000 in our fees. So we were we made that decision. This is for the benefit of the new council members. So we made that decision to go ahead and redistrict as a strategic move, as Mr. Snow said, to prevent any future litigation and fees that may come from that one particular law firm that was going up and down the state challenging the communities that were in excess of 50,000. Is that what the cutoff was? And because we were at 53 or 54 at the time.
Yeah, and this is Jeff. If I may add, it's not just Highland's certainly an example of that. I can give you a couple of other examples of some of the cases. So Santa Monica is the biggest one, and still going through litigation right now. Santa Monica has spent an estimated $7 million so far, and the plaintiffs in the Santa Monica case have requested $22 million in legal fees after the original trial. Palmdale settled for $4.7 million. Modesto settled for $3 million. You mentioned Highland, that was $1.3 million. Anaheim settled for $1.1 million. Whittier for $1 million. So there have been some pretty high profile cases with some high profile price tags associated with attempting not to move to districts. So there is that potential legal and financial ramifications for considering moving back.
Any of those cities share similar demographics with Yucaipa?
Again, I think at this point, we have the new information and have not gone through that analysis yet, and that's something that would be a first step, and we'd want to take a look at that, see what Yucaipa's demographics are, and have an analysis of that, and perhaps an opportunity for legal counsel to brief the city council before we moved in that direction.
Perhaps we present that in the next, what do we call this? Public hearing. Thanks, David. Is that an option?
I think at this point, I guess what I'm hearing is that there's interest for the council to look in that direction. If there is, then we can look at that, and then I'll report back to the council as far as a path forward on that.
Well, I concur with Councilmember Avila. The district idea in Yucaipa doesn't make sense, and it also isn't good for our city. So, I mean, it's worth the looking into.
And just this evening, upon entering City Hall, I was met by a gentleman who made it a point to let me know that he doesn't live in my district, as if for some reason that means I don't represent his interests, which I think is the point that my colleagues up here are trying to make. Is we all, I think, out of an interest for bettering Yucaipa as a whole, decided to put ourselves in the hot seat, so to speak. We do represent the community as a whole, whether you live in Mayor Bogue's district or Mayor Pro Tem Duncan's district. Please know that regardless of what happens as a result of this redistricting, I think I can speak for everybody up here that we all want to represent you, whether or not you live in the south end, the north end. Feel free to reach out to any of us to help us relay your sentiments. But I would agree with Councilmember Avila and Mayor Bogue. I think that if we've met our due diligence and we've appeased this law firm that is no doubt listening into what we're saying right now, I think moving back to a city at large would be serving the public interest best than this district city.
And the only reason I say that is because like Jeff said, that our demographics show that is a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't put it out there if we were Highland, where it's definitely divided into two different areas. But even when we initially put this in as districts, the presenters said that there really isn't a problem in Yucaipa. I remember him vividly saying that. So anyway, John.
Let me be clear. When you say I'm not giving you any indication either way. I don't want to opine or act like I'm opining on whether you guys can go back to at large or not. The only thing that I'm saying is that your districts, as they are now, are population balanced. Let me make clear of what I was saying there.
Right, that's understood.
Yes, and I think to make clear what I was saying as well, there's an analysis for the exercise on whether the districts need to be redrawn. It's a different exercise for that threshold question of whether we need to do districting in the first place. And that's a separate analysis that it sounds like the council would like undertaken. And it's something
I
that
think that
we
should
can-
all be part of the discussion. It should not be isolated. That should have been part of the discussion and part of this presentation, I think, to have that ability to discuss that. Personally, that's my observation.
All right, so John, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I think that if the city council did this initially for legal reasons, we need to be cautious about looking at going back. If we were looking ahead to try to be wise about what we were doing so we don't open ourselves up, we should be careful about reversing that decision. While I don't have all the information yet, I don't mind listening to it, but I'm going to be cautious on this because if we've already gone a particular direction to protect ourselves a little bit, I don't think we want to try to go backwards. So right now, that's kind of my mindset.
Right. That's kind of my opinion also. I would proceed with extreme caution. I don't want to open it up for any litigation, but I don't think, anyways, something to look at. So we have two, well, at this point, I guess I will close the public hearing unless anyone has anything else. All right, so I'll close the public hearing, and then we have 2 items here that we need to discuss and vote on. Receive a report, redistricting process, permissible criteria to be considered to be redrawn, city council election district boundaries, receive public input. Okay.
I make a motion that we receive the report on the redistricting process. And then item number 2, well, there is no public input at this point, is there?
No.
So I move that items 1 and 2 be approved.
Do we need to put in there that we're just going to leave the district boundaries as is, or?
No, I think at this point, and Mr. Sigmetti can jump in as well, but I think at this point, really, it's just collecting information. If there's any information from the public regarding communities of interest, if there's any input that this council wanted to provide regarding that, now would be the time to do that. And then later on is when map options would be presented to the council, which sounds like a preliminary. One of those will be perhaps the current map.
Okay. All right, so we have a.
Yes, that is correct. And again, at the second hearing, we'll be asking for more specific feedback and direction on, are there neighborhoods and communities of interest that you want to include and identify?
Okay. So we have a motion.
I'll second Mayor Pro Tem's motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Painless, right? All right, so that takes us to public comment, and I do have one speaker slip here, and it is for Senator Ochoa Bogue.
Good evening, everyone. I might have picked the wrong night to come to the city of Yucaipa. Actually, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy to be home. As you may know, I have been traveling back and forth to Sacramento since January, but from mid-September to January 3rd, I'm in the district and very, very happy to do so. In that course of time, it has been my objective to visit all of our cities, including our city council specifically, because I would like to, 1, introduce myself if we have not yet met, and number 2, to let you know that we are here, number 1, from our district office in order to serve our constituents on behalf of constituent services, so helping navigate any state agency. As a senator, we do have somebody in pretty much a direct contact in each of the state agencies that we can communicate with and expedite any services that our constituents may need. So that goes on behalf of the city, if there's anything that the city needs on that end, or number 2, any of the constituents, the residents here in our city of Yucaipa, or in my district, SC23. So just wanted to emphasize that objective. And number 3, I just wanted to let you know that we're working very hard in Sacramento to advocate for local control. In that sense, I would like you to know that we've been fostering relationships with your staff and local electeds, just to hear what is going on here at the grassroots efforts, because the better I have communication with you all, as far as staff and electeds, the better I can represent the best interests of our communities. Since you do represent your districts, in this case, you know what's best for your district and you know what the people are wanting. So I'm an open book. Please take advantage of the fact that I'm here full-time to meet with me individually if you'd like to have a conversation on any of the issues. I know that there's a lot of things going on in our state, and so I look forward to having those conversations if need be, and that goes for the public as well on that end. So, oh, and by the way, thank you for the amazing festival, the fall festival this past week, and I had a great time enjoying the music and the food, and of course the camaraderie. I think it's what makes Yucaipa quite a very special city in our state. And hearing what goes on at the rest of the state, I have to tell you, I am blessed to represent this district. I'm blessed to live in this city where we make community and family number 1, and the well-being and public safety number 2, and always making sure that we're there as far as faith-based organizations and service organizations to meet the needs of the local community. It really does make a difference and impact on the quality of life for everyone. So thank you and kudos on that end.
All right, so I don't have any other public comment. All right, so that's going to take us to the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 9. Are there any items one wishes to withdraw from the consent agenda?
I'll move approval on items 2 through 9 on the consent agenda.
All right, so we
I'll second.
have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to, we had mayor and council member reports. So item number 10, and I believe this is Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In December, you went through the list of memberships on various council committees, and you appointed particular people to serve on each of those. We are here before you this evening requesting that you consider adding an alternate committee member to the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee to address any potential conflicts that a current member may have on a particular item. I know the city manager and the committee have been meeting to discuss both police and fire-related issues, and an alternate would help if we do have a conflict of interest.
All right, so we need to add an alternate to the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee.
I would like to express interest to be that alternate.
Okay. So is everyone okay with Councilmember Avila? With that, is there a motion to accept Councilmember Avila?
I will motion that we accept Councilmember Avila as the alternate to the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so it takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
I do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, so that takes us to department reports, and the first one will be item number 11, and I believe this is Megan.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Since September 5th, 2020, El Dorado Ranch Park has been closed due to damage caused by a fire. Staff believes the trails, group camping, and equestrian camping areas can reopen in March 2022. Similar to the reopening of the Uptown with the Music and Arts Festival, staff is recommending the reopening of El Dorado Park with a Kick the Dust Up Fest. If approved, the event will be held on Friday, March 25th, 2022 from 6 to 10 p.m. and Saturday, March 26th from 12 to 10 p.m. at El Dorado Five Winds Ranch Park. The event will include live entertainment, a beer and wine garden, balloon rides, activities, photo opportunities, and overnight camping opportunities. If approved, staff will work on the logistics, and the estimated cost to provide this festival is $250,000, and the estimated revenue from the event is $200,000. This is based on charging an entrance fee of $25 per person per night, for a net cost of $50,000. If approved, staff will return to council at a later date to discuss the details of the event. This concludes my report, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
So are there any questions for staff?
Do we plan on having this at the park, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think it would be cool to reach out to some of our neighbors right there in Oak Glen, in the county area, specifically some of the businesses that were affected by that fire. And then the unrelated, yet just as tragic, well, a little less tragic, but the Los Rios Ranch fire that we lost that historic building. I know they're still working to recoup funds and build that, and perhaps they would like to be present since it's so close to the city-county line and that community up there. I think it would be neat to see some of the businesses and Los Rios Ranch specifically, if they're interested in being present at this Kick the Dust Up Fest to reopen I think one of the cooler parks in our community that really encompasses and you know, shows our rural part of our community. So that's my recommendation, and I think it'd be cool to see that happen.
Bob, you have anything?
I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see us do that for sure.
David, you have anything?
No, I do not.
John?
No, I like it.
I like the idea. I'm looking at the cost. It is a little concerning. $250,000 is a lot of money. And it says that we will, let's see, we'll have a revenue of $200,000 by charging $25 a day per person, which equals 8,000 people. So are we gonna be able to draw 8,000 people to that area?
Is that gonna be just for admission, or is that gonna be for like the vendors and whatever profits we get from all the different activities that go on there? Or is that projected revenue just for entrance?
That is projected revenue just for entrance into the event. Any revenue in addition to that is
I
added
don't think
to
that's
the-
possible.
So we think we're be able to get 4,000 people per
I
day?
think that we will work hard for a marketing plan to get the ticket sales up and get tickets sold to this fest and work to meet the goals of selling 8,000 tickets.
I don't think it would be a problem if we are getting the right live entertainment, and that's the question: is what in your mind is going to, you know, attract that kind of attention? Certainly not maybe a garage band, but maybe more of a type of headliner. I know we've worked with the talent agencies that represent Temecula Road and those other, you know, big name bands. Is it something that we're optimistic we'll be able to attract a headliner?
Prior to writing this council report, staff has reached out to several different agents. Right now, the goal is to get some country acts with, you know, the feel and the vibe of Five Winds Ranch is very country, dirt roads. And so the estimated expense for production and talent right now is $150,000. And that is so that we can get a name band, a well-known band similar to Music and Arts Festival, so that people will buy tickets for this event.
You know, Luke Bryan has a song called "Kick the Dust Up."
I have spoke with his agent to confirm we can use that name, but it may have inspired staff.
There it is. See?
Anyways, I think it's a great idea. It's a great event. I'm just a little concerned about the dollar amount. It's, maybe we can bring that down and when you bring it back.
But that 250,000 includes 150,000 for entertainment, so that price goes down if we can't find $150,000 worth of talent.
Okay. Well, I support it with caution, so.
I mean, maybe we can have a date that if we don't have this a headliner or something that we are optimistic will attract it, then we do something more small, community based, and
Scale
not
back.
so large.
Is the amphitheater going to be done by then as far as having an actual stage?
So this proposed event would actually bring in a stage and production. We would not be using the amphitheater for this event.
All right, so with that, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to item 12. I believe this is for me.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is the designation of street right-of-way for the County Line Road Corridor Project. As you're aware, the County Line Road Corridor Project is a joint project between the City of Yucaipa and City of Cal Mesa to improve County Line Road between Bryant Street and just east of Cal Mesa Boulevard. This is a partially grant-funded project in which both the City of Yucaipa and Cal Mesa partnered to to apply for some SP1 LPP grant funding and for this project, and we were successful in obtaining that grant funding. Again, the project will address the increase of traffic on County Line Road, specifically during peak morning and evening commuting hours. The exhibit on the screen shows the limits of the project from Cal Mesa Boulevard to Bryant Street. The segments that are in the different colors represent the different segments that are funded by 3 specific grant funding sources. The largest, the green area, the ATP project component has been completed. The one that we are currently working on is the SB1 LPP grant, which is identified in purple. That grant program, the grant funding does have a deadline of March 2022 by the City of Cal Mesa is taking the lead on the construction, on the bid process and the construction of that. And again, the grant requirements do indicate that the contract for the construction must be awarded prior to March of 2022. But in order to construct the project, right away from 17 properties is required. And to date, staff has been able to obtain right away from 15 of those 17 properties. We are close to reaching an agreement with the remaining 2. And we're hoping to bring a purchase and sale agreement back to council here in the near future. Over the last year, a total of 3 full property acquisitions have been approved by City Council. And for those full property acquisitions, the entire property has been purchased, including the home if the property is not vacant. And on this same exhibit, you'll see the location of those 3 properties circled in red. The first one on the top right is at the northeast corner of County Line Road and 5th Street. And then in the middle of the screen is the northeast corner of County Line Road and 3rd. And then at the bottom is the northeast corner of County Line Road and California Street. I do want to point out that City of Cal Mesa is also moving forward with acquiring the property that's required for the project on the south side of County Line Road. And they're on track to obtaining all that right away soon, again, to be able to start the construction. And as you've heard before, in order to construct the roundabouts at these intersections, City Council action is required to designate a portion of the overall property as a public street right-of-way. By designating that portion of the property as public street right-of-way, the remaining property will have a clean title and then can be sold in the open market in the near future. And staff will return to council with a recommendation regarding the disposition of those properties in the future. The proposed right-of-way here is consistent with the city's general plan. There is no fiscal impact associated with this council action. However, I do want to point out that the proposed designation of the public street right-of-way is required by the grant funding in order to be able to construct the project and be able to check another list off of their box off of the grant funding requirements. With that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
So are there any questions for staff? John, you have anything?
No.
No, David? Bob, do you have anything?
No, sir.
I
So with
move
that-
approval.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for items 1 through 3 on agenda item number 12. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to another public hearing, which is item 13. And is this Fermin again? Or is this Ben?
Ben Matlock will be presenting this item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so for the record, I will open up the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. This is part of our annual adjustment of the city's development impact fees program for the city of Yucaipa. As council is aware, this development impact fee program essentially assesses the build-out kind of requirements of infrastructure that's needed as the city reaches build-out, and then divides that number of that cost to each respective unit or development project to kind of pay that fair share of it. So as the city reaches out, it provides a funding source to do the different infrastructure projects, including drainage and fire projects and traffic-related improvements that are needed as the city hits that ultimate growth and build-out condition of the city. And so as part of the DIF program, we do annual adjustments to kind of make sure that the program keeps pace with any changes that are needed to be done. And so a number of different elements go into the annual adjustment, and I'll quickly go over them quickly. One is looking at kind of ultimately the project cost. And so one of the key elements for kind of standard projects is a construction cost index increase. However, this year kind of represents kind of the largest single year update that we have kind of on record. It's 8.7%. Generally, it's been in kind of the 2 to 3% range, so that was a pretty notable increase. And then we also do project-related cost adjustments of new information as known. So if there's a particular development impact fee project that we're aware of where the estimate has changed a little bit, we try to make sure that that is adequately reflected in the program schedule to ensure that adequate funding is provided. And then as part of it, then we also adjust the different elements based on the total diff that had been collected in the prior year, any development impact fees that had been deferred to make sure that that number was reflected in revenue that will be obtained in the future. So an example of this kind of deferral is projects where they're in the building permit stage, they're building the project but had deferred it, and so they'll pay those fees at close of occupancy. And then another project in particular this year is the Woodside Homes project, the Serrano Lake, since their fees are locked in as part of the development impact fee, and so, or as part of their development agreement, and so that's reflected in the numbers as well. And then kind of other components that go into it is the local agency investment fund, or kind of LAIF, the interest that's collected on any loans that are outstanding to make sure that that's collected appropriately. And then the kind of last elements is any general plan amendments and development-related adjustments that come in. So if we notice that we're going to build a little bit more as part of a build-out, then we make sure that that number's calibrated appropriately as well. And so as part of this year, we have done some minor adjustments related to the housing element, the policies and programs that were established in the draft housing element submitted to HCD. We tried to make sure that that was captured within this development impact fee program. And then also some rough assessments or estimates for the freeway corridor specific plan update that's underway. And then as these things are ultimately approved, then we'll make sure that we recalibrate the DIF program appropriately to make sure that the total build out is assumed as part of the program. And then the last element that's unique about this annual adjustment is following the September 13th, 2021 City Council study session, as we have adjusted the commercial and industrial traffic adjustment factor. If council may recall, there was a adjustment factor of 0.3, or essentially a 70% discount on commercial and industrial projects. And so council at that last study session had directed staff to modify that adjustment factor to make sure that the fair share cost for those particular projects are levied. And then as part of it, so there has been some modest increases in the residential field with respect to some of the impacts from the cost of construction increases, as well as the traffic-related facilities. And so the total fee per unit would be $19,201, assuming a 10,000 square foot single-family residence being built. And then the city does have, as part of our development impact fee program, a multifamily reduction for multifamily projects, essentially recognizing that those are typically smaller, so it's 2 bedrooms or less, are assessed at 70% of the normal fee, or kind of what would be the average daily trips, the ITE manual kind of assessment for some of the different fees, including traffic, public facilities, and then park facilities. However, fire and drainage are still assessed at the standard rate. And then we also incorporate within the resolution the reductions necessary for ADUs, which state law establishes those under 750 square feet are not subject to diffs. And then those that are over are charged a proportional amount of what the residence would be. So if a single family residence is, let's say, 2,000 square feet, you're building an ADU of 1,000, then the diff fee would not exceed 50% of what we would charge for the single family residence, consistent with state law. And then as part of it, the update, so even with some of these changes, the city development impact fee stays within the middle of the pack within what the city fees at South Platts, and then we remain at the second most expensive with all the other agency fees that we do not have any control over. So we still remain within the same kind of limits there as part of the assessment. So we did provide a diff comparison for other cities. It isn't the basis for what we should assess our diff program, since every city has their own infrastructure needs, but it does give a baseline of how we kind of relate to it. And then we did include, for council's reference, the 8.7 increase for the CZI, since it was a noticeable increase, and so making sure that other cities are probably going to have the same related cost increases, since their infrastructure that they need to build would also have gone up by that same amount. And then commercial industrial fees have also changed, particularly with respect to the traffic-related impact fees based on the market adjustment or the traffic adjustment factor that was in place. And so the commercial fee, assuming a 1 acre project with a 15,000 square foot building, would be $87,021, and the industrial would be a little bit higher at $94,080, with the adjustment factor in place for those projects. However, as part of this, again, the comparison with other jurisdictions, looking at how we compete, the city of Yucaipa with these changes still remains the second lowest development impact fee for other jurisdictions. So we still remain highly competitive with our fees with respect to other jurisdictions in the area. And then as the city moves forward, it is worthwhile to periodically do a more comprehensive update to the DIF program to ensure that the projects and costs are accurate, and then further exploring perhaps the residential and commercial industrial fees. As part of this update, we did modify the adjustment factor to be 1 for commercial and 1.125 to best approximate kind of that passenger car equivalence for truck traffic. But generally speaking, industrial projects with heavier trucks end up resulting in more significant traffic-related impacts just because there's more heavy trucks. And so those heavy trucks have kind of a disproportional amount of impact with how they move in terms of the traffic circulation than a regular passenger car. And so certainly in the future, the city may explore those elements further with a comprehensive update. But that kind of concludes my presentation. We did notify, so this development impact fee update was noticed in the paper, as well as sent to respective utility companies in the BIA or Building Industry Association, and no comments were received through those notices.
All right, so for the record, I do not have a public comment slip. So does anyone have any questions or comments for staff? Justin, you have anything?
I mean, I think it's appropriate that we find ourselves middle of the road as it relates to our commercial development impact fees. I think for too long, we've been lower than need be. I think I was reported at one of the last meetings that the intent behind it was good. However, it didn't seem to benefit us very much as it relates to attracting business. And should we find ourselves now growing, it's appropriate that we don't overburden the taxpayer with the impact that commercial infrastructure has on the city. So I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I have one real fast question. On page 127, we've got the development fee comparison. And at the end of the matrix there, it says with an assumed 8.7% of the construction cost index. What happens if that's lower? Will we charge a lower rate, or will that stay the same? Or what if it's not 8.7? What if it's less or more?
So as a point of clarification, so the 8.7 CCI is what the ENR established. So the CCI increase was 8.7%. We are assuming that because other cities are also having to build infrastructure as part of their development impact fee program, is that their fees at some point, if all other things being absent or equal, they would still have to increase their infrastructure costs by 8.7% to keep up with the CCI that we have already calibrated into our fees. So the fees that we have received from other cities are from last year, and so assuming that they do their comprehensive update, they would also see a similar increase as a result of.
So it's not part of what it's based on other information, other cities.
Yeah, so assuming that they
Basically.
have to, that they'll be born with the same infrastructure cost entries that we have.
Got it.
John, you have anything? Nope. Bob?
Well, I know we've got 3 potential warehouses right now, one at County Line Road, 2 at Wildwood, no, it's Live Oak. And raising this 100% right now, it might look like we're trying to gouge them since they're planning to build those facilities. Are we basically going to do this every year, just keep raising? Because we're trying to encourage residential growth, and we have to. And at 13.88% with the highest school fees in the state, it just seems like we might be shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't like raising these fees at all, but I don't want the taxpayer to have to pay the fees. But still, I mean, 100%, 121%, that seems a little steep to me.
So part of it is kind of 2 different elements. One is following the study session, the September meeting is that we had provided essentially that adjustment factor of 0.3 for commercial industrial projects. And so as a result, our city development impact fees for commercial industrial projects were by far the lowest by, in some cases, tens to $100,000 per acre of development. And so this update does push us up comparatively from last year. It is an increase, but with those fees, we still end up being the second cheapest community in the region with those fee updates. And the second part is, as part of the traffic-related fees, is addressing updated project costs. So one of those project costs is the Wildwood Interchange project, which specifically would benefit those commercial and industrial projects probably the most in terms of that. And so as part of the fair share cost distribution of the infrastructure needed to facilitate those projects, this would better capture that to ensure that that is being equitably shared by those that would use that facility.
Does senior housing, multifamily senior housing, does that get a reduced fee on the traffic as opposed to just regular market value apartments?
So the way that the multifamily accounts for is 1 or 2 bedroom units are assessed at 0.7% or the 70% fee calibration. So that would include both senior housing projects or smaller, family type apartment projects. Then those that are larger, so 3 bedroom and kind of the larger family oriented apartment projects are assessed at family rate as well.
Good?
I guess I am.
I think what concerns me the most is to see the 8.7 CCI. That just shows you that inflation is here. And it's real, and it is making an impact, so. With that, I will close the public hearing, and I will open it up for discussion and a motion and a vote. Any more discussion?
No discussion, but go ahead and move to approve.
I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
All right, so 4-1, that's going to, so now we're going to move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Bob, you have something?
We have a skating rink coming in November, right? Yay. What day is that in November? 27.
Make a Difference Day is the 23rd and the 24th. Oh, and the 30th, yeah, right. 2 Saturdays in a row. All right.
That's this month, October 26th?
23rd and 30th.
All right. Anyone? David, do you have anything?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, can't think of anything.
All right. John, do you have anything?
I do not.
All right. Is everyone good? All right, so we do have a closed session, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We've got 3 items on closed session for this evening. They're all involving conference with real property negotiators. The first is assessor's parcel number 319371-10. It's at 34509 Avenue E. City's negotiators, Mr. Casey, and the negotiating parties, June Del Campo, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. Second one is Assessor's Parcel Number 0303-253-38. Again, city's negotiator is Mr. Casey, and the negotiating parties are the city regarding disposition of the property and price and terms of payment. And then third is the Conference with Real Property Negotiator regarding 32032 Live Oak Canyon Road. Again, Mr. Casey, the city's negotiating agent, and Robertson Ranch Properties here also under negotiation is price and terms of payment, and we do not expect reportable action on these items this evening.
All right, and with that, I think we're going to have the closed session in here, in the council chambers, because Ray is on the phone. We're going to call him, okay, all right then.
And before you close, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Senator Bogue once again. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. It's always great to see you. And to show equal time, thank you, Scott. Scott Ward representing Supervisor Don Rao. He's always welcome here and he's always attending. Thank you. Thank you both.
All right, with that, we will close the city council meeting.